Chapter 381. Valen Ashbluff 1. Arthur Nightingale, Valen said, his voice carrying the weight of authority that came from sitting atop the throne. Current rank one of Mythos Academy's second years, third place in the Inter-Academy Festival, Guildmaster of bronze-ranked Guild Ouroboros, bonded with a lich, dual gift wielder, rare user of all elements of mana including pure light and deep dark, in a relationship with Princess Seraphina Zenith, Princess Cecilia Slatemark, Princess Rachel Creighton and Lady Rose Springshaper at the same time. In the future, if you were to marry them, you would basically unite the central continent with half the north and half the east, won't you? I maintained my composure despite the king's startlingly comprehensive knowledge of my affairs. It was disconcerting to hear my life summarized so precisely by someone I'd never formally met. His study, located at the top of the eastern tower, felt suddenly more confined, the tomes lining the walls and artifacts displayed on pedestals seeming to lean inward, listening. "That is too much praise for me, Your Majesty," I replied, keeping my tone respectful yet not subservient. The Star of Valor medal hung heavy against my chest, a reminder of the ceremony that had brought me to the Western continent in the first place. "I disagree." He shook his head as his onyx eyes glinted with interest. "Seeing you in person, I can feel it. What an astounding talent indeed. Well, I am here to offer you your second reward." Outside the tower window, the lights of the western capital twinkled, a reflection of the stars above. Music from the ongoing ball drifted faintly upward, a reminder of the celebration continuing in my honor several floors below. I wondered briefly if Callie was handling the noble's attention with any degree of patience. "Yes, Your Majesty," I said, genuinely curious what someone of his stature would consider worthy compensation. Valen Ashbluff wasn't known for his generosity. Every gift had purpose, every reward a calculated move in his centuries-long game of power. "Exclusive trading rights for Western beasts," Valen said with a tilt of his head. "How would you like to bolster your supply with beasts from here for necromantic supplies?" I sucked in air, momentarily losing my practiced composure. The Western continent was renowned for its unique fauna steeped in dark mana, many of which possessed properties that made them invaluable for necromantic research. The dread wolves of the northern wastes, the ghostfin serpents of the western seas, the shadowroot plants that grew only in specific volcanic soils, all possess qualities that necromancers across the world would kill to access. Such an offer would catapult Ouroboros beyond any competing guild in our tier. It was the kind of opportunity that came once in a lifetime, if at all. Yet I knew my limitations. "I am not worthy of this offer," I replied carefully, watching his reaction. The subtle shifts in his expression would tell me more than his words ever could. Ouroboros wasn't strong enough to handle such an operation yet. We lacked the infrastructure, the manpower, and the political connections necessary to fully leverage such rights. Accepting now would either doom us to failure or make us dependent on larger entities who would happily exploit our weakness. Neither option aligned with my long-term goals. Valen pondered for a bit before a small smile appeared, the expression subtle but somehow more threatening than reassuring, like the first glimpse of a predator's teeth in the darkness. "Smart," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Ambitious but grounded, not aiming for too much. I like you, Arthur Nightingale. Then, how about a future guarantee?" I listened intently, maintaining a neutral expression despite my growing interest. Luna stirred in the back of my mind, her presence alert and watchful. "Careful," she warned silently. "His offers must come with conditions unstated. How about I guarantee your guild operating rights in the Western continent in the future?" Valen proposed. "Of course, to get that, you need to achieve a certain level." I knew exactly what certain level he was hinting at. I needed to sit atop the empty throne in order to achieve that. "I assume you are planning on eventually absorbing Vokert as well, right?" Valen confirmed as I nodded. Vokert Industries was the largest supplier of necromantic materials in the Slatemark Empire, a corporate giant whose resources dwarfed those of my fledgling guild. Vokert is an exceptional company, but that is from the eyes of the Slatemark Empire. There are plenty of companies better here in the West. It is merely how the continents are. We are steeped deep in deep dark. So, not only am I going to give you operating rights, I shall give you this. He slid over his tablet, a sleek device that contained information not meant for public viewing. The screen's soft glow illuminated his face from below, casting upward shadows that emphasized the power in his eyes. I grabbed it and read, my eyes widening in genuine shock. The contract displayed on the screen outlined not just operating rights, but preferential access to research facilities, expedited licensing for necromantic experiments that would be heavily restricted elsewhere, and most shocking of all, the right to recruit from among the Western continent's elite necromancers. If the trading rights had been valuable, this was beyond price. It was the kind of agreement typically reserved for organizations that had proven themselves over decades, not bronze-ranked guilds led by 16-year-olds. There is no reason for me to not accept, I responded, careful to keep my voice steady despite my excitement. The potential this offered was staggering. An acceleration of my plans by years, perhaps decades. Of course, Valen said with a knowing smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. It is very favorable to you after all. The wood of his chair creaked slightly as he shifted his weight, the sound unnaturally loud in the hushed study. A clock somewhere ticked methodically, marking the passage of time that must feel so different to someone who had lived for centuries. I hesitated, then decided to ask the question that had been nagging at me since he first made his offer. I must ask, Your Majesty, why go so far for me? Valen leaned back on the sofa. His posture relaxed in a way that only emphasized his confidence in his own power. Like a dragon lounging atop its hoard, secure in the knowledge that nothing could threaten it. I merely feel like it, no other reason. Seems interesting, and I want to see how far you can go eventually. After all, you even managed to get my son to work under you. I shuddered involuntarily, a chill running down my spine. So he found out, I thought, maintaining my outward composure even as my mind raced through contingency plans. The mana oath that bound Jean to my service was supposed to be our secret, a result of careful blackmail that had given me leverage over the Crown Prince. That Valen knew of it changed the dynamics considerably. I don't know how you did it, but it's interesting, Valen said as his eyes gleamed with a predatory light. You truly have the makings of a true emperor, Nightingale. The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled between us. I had expected many things from this meeting, but such direct acknowledgement of my ambitions wasn't among them. The empty throne was a goal whispered in the darkness of my mind, not something I had openly declared. You flatter me, Your Majesty, I said finally, though I wonder if Jean shares your assessment. Valen laughed, the sound rich and genuine despite the tension in the air. My son has always been selective about whom he respects. That he agreed to work under you, by whatever means you managed it, speaks volumes. He rose from his seat and moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. His silhouette against the night sky seemed larger than life, a reminder of the power he wielded so effortlessly. However, I don't give such valuable contracts to just anyone, even someone with your potential. I tensed slightly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nothing came without a price, especially from someone like Valen Ashbluff. Before I sign this, Valen continued, turning back to face me, his expression shifting to one of calculated interest. I wish to conduct a small test. What kind of test? I asked, though I suspected the answer wouldn't be pleasant. My fingers twitched slightly, ready to activate my defensive abilities at a moment's notice. Valen's smile widened. Simple. Survive 10 strikes from me. Chapter 382. Valen Ashbluff. 2. How can I survive 10 strikes? I asked, unable to hide the disbelief in my voice. Even with his power restricted, Valen Ashbluff was still one of the most formidable necromancers alive. I will restrict them to below the level of the wall, Valen pointed out, his lips curving into a slight smile. So, won't it be possible? The wall, the boundary between integration rank and ascendant rank, a threshold that separated the merely exceptional from the truly legendary. Still, even at peak integration rank, Valen's attacks would be devastating. It's possible, I conceded, calculating my odds. Though I question whether surviving constitutes passing, or if you expect me to remain standing. Valen's smile widened. Conscious will suffice. I have no desire to explain to those princesses of yours why I returned their suitor in pieces. I nodded, my mind already racing through defensive combinations. Where shall we conduct this test? Valen gestured toward a previously hidden door that slid open at his command. Beyond lay a circular chamber with reinforced walls and floor, bare of decoration save for faintly glowing runes etched into the stone. My private training room, he explained. It can withstand far more than what I'll unleash tonight. As I stepped inside, I immediately began preparing my defenses. Soul resonance activated first, granting me mythic body, a reinforcement of my physical form that would make me more resistant to damage. Next came Seraphim's Embrace, the artifact enhancing my senses, allowing me to perceive threats with greater clarity. Be careful, Luna warned, her presence a cool whisper in my mind. He's testing more than just your power. I know, I replied silently. He wants to see if I'm worthy of his investment. Interesting, Valen observed, watching as Erebus's deep dark and bone armor materialized around me, shadows and calcified plates interlocking to form a protective layer. Most would attempt to counter specific attacks as they come. You build a comprehensive defense from the start. Against you, it seemed prudent, I replied, drawing a Volvis from my spatial ring. The sword hummed in response to my grip, recognizing its wielder. Valen nodded, then reached into his own spatial ring, withdrawing a set of ornate daggers. Their blades were darker than night, infused with concentrated deep dark energy that seemed to absorb the light around them. These will be my medium. Are you ready? I settled into a defensive stance, lucent harmony activating to grant me clearer perception of mana flows. Ready. The first dagger came without warning, a flash of darkness that crossed the room faster than an ordinary eye could track. But with soul vision and Seraphim's Embrace, I perceived its approach with enhanced clarity. The throw was precise but restrained, aimed at my shoulder with power that I recognized as low integration rank. I deflected it easily with a Volvis, the blade singing as it connected with the dagger, sending it clattering to the floor. 1, Valen counted. Good reaction time. The second dagger came from a different angle, slightly faster but still well within my capabilities to perceive and counter. Again, low integration rank, though with a subtle shift in the mana composition that suggested Valen was testing different approaches. I sidestepped this one, letting it pass harmlessly before it embedded itself in the wall behind me. 2, Valen noted, his expression unchanged. Let's increase the difficulty. The third dagger came with something new, a subtle emanation of focus power that I recognized as dagger intent, the first level of weapon mastery that allowed proper channeling of deep dark energy. The blade seemed to acquire a purpose beyond its physical form, as if guided by an invisible hand. Watch the trajectory, Luna cautioned. It's not just moving faster, it's seeking you. I brought up my bone armor to intercept it, keeping my pure light separate as I channeled it through a Volvis to create a countering force. The dagger struck with enough force to crack the armor, though it didn't penetrate completely. 3, Valen said, a hint of approval in his voice. Few your age would recognize intent in time to counter. I didn't respond, focused on maintaining my defenses while simultaneously analyzing the pattern of his attacks. So far, he seemed to be methodically increasing the power and complexity, testing different aspects of my defensive capabilities. The fourth dagger came faster still, its power elevated to mid-integration rank. The increase in raw force was substantial, like comparing a stream to a river. It curved in midair, attempting to bypass my guard entirely. I activated God Flash, disappearing from its path and reappearing 2 meters to the left. The dagger embedded itself in the floor where I had been standing, the stone cracking around it. 4, Valen counted. Impressive mobility. The fifth attack changed the paradigm entirely. This time, 3 daggers materialized simultaneously, each thrumming with dagger resonance. a higher application of weapon mastery that transformed the simple blades into carriers for devastating force. They were arranged in a triangular formation, eliminating simple escape routes. "He's testing your adaptability," Luna observed. "You can't dodge all three." I channeled pure light through Evolvus, creating a blade of light energy that extended beyond the physical sword. Against deep dark, pure light was the natural counter. As the daggers approached, I swept the energy blade in an arc, attempting to disrupt their formation. It partially worked. 2 daggers wavered, their resonance disrupted enough to send them off course. But the third struck my bone armor directly, shattering several plates and sending a jolt of pain through my chest. "5, Valen said, his interest visibly growing. "You understand elemental opposition principles that many twice your age fail to grasp." I steadied myself, breathing harder now. The cumulative strain of maintaining multiple defenses was beginning to tell, and we were only halfway through. The 6th attack came with barely a heartbeat's pause, a flurry of 5 daggers, each imbued with high integration rank power and dagger resonance. Their approach created a localized distortion in the air, the deep dark energy so concentrated that it seemed to warp the very space around them. "You can't counter them all head-on," Luna warned urgently. "You need a different approach." I channeled deep dark through my free hand, creating a swirling vortex that attracted the daggers toward it, while simultaneously using pure light through Evolvus to create a barrier between me and the point of convergence. The daggers collided, their resonances interfering with each other in a chaotic explosion of energy. The force of the blast sent me sliding backward, my boots leaving furrows in the stone floor. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I fought to maintain control over the conflicting energies. 6, Valen counted. Creative application of principles. I didn't waste breath responding. My muscles trembled with exertion as I reinforced my mythic body, channeling more energy into my physical enhancements. The next attacks would be even more dangerous. True to expectation, the 7th attack materialized as a ring of daggers, 12 in total, that surrounded me completely, all pulsing with high integration rank power and dagger resonance. They hovered momentarily, their deep dark energy creating a cage of lethal intent. "Arthur." Luna's voice held a note of alarm I rarely heard. "This is beyond." "I know." I cut her off, my mind racing through possibilities. I activated every defense strategically. Mythic body at full power, bone armor reinforced with deep dark, Evolvus channeling pure light. But it wouldn't be enough for a direct defense. In a desperate gambit, I drove Evolvus into the floor, channeling both pure light and my lightning elemental energy through it in a radial burst. The stone beneath me cracked, and a shockwave of countering energy exploded outward just as the daggers converged. The collision was catastrophic. Several daggers were deflected, others shattered, but 3 broke through my defenses. One sliced across my shoulder, another grazed my thigh, and the third, the most dangerous, embedded itself in my side, missing vital organs by millimeters. Blood soaked through my formal attire, the pain sharp and immediate. I staggered but remained standing, my vision briefly blurring as shock threatened to overwhelm me. 7, Valen said, his voice betraying neither concern nor satisfaction. "You're bleeding quite heavily." I grimaced, pressing my free hand against the wound while maintaining my defensive posture. "I'm still conscious," I managed through gritted teeth. "Arthur, your mana reserves are depleting rapidly," Luna cautioned, her presence providing stability as my focus wavered. "And your physical condition is deteriorating." "I can make it," I insisted, though even in our mental connection, the strain was evident. The 8th attack came before I could fully recover, another peak integration rank assault but with a different application of resonance. This time, a single dagger materialized before Valen, larger than the previous ones, its blade clad in deep dark. When he released it, it didn't simply fly, it phased in and out of reality, its trajectory impossible to predict as it seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously. I attempted to evade with God Flash, but the stress of my wounds and depleted mana had slowed my reactions. The dagger caught me mid-teleport, its trajectory intersecting with my new position as if it had anticipated my movement. The impact was devastating. It pierced through what remained of my bone armor, punctured my reinforced body, and exited through my back, missing my spine by millimeters but severing critical blood vessels. I collapsed to my knees, blood pooling rapidly beneath me as my vision darkened at the edges. Chapter 383. Valen Ashbluff. 3. Arthur. Luna's voice echoed in my mind, her presence surging forward to stabilize our connection as my consciousness wavered. Stay with me. I tried to stand, to show that I could continue, but my body refused to respond. The room spun around me, Valen's figure blurring as I struggled to maintain focus. 8. Valen counted, approaching with measured steps. And that's where your limits lie. The bitter taste of failure flooded my mouth along with the copper tang of blood. Once again, just like during the Crown Challenge, I'd reached for resonance and found only emptiness. That elusive harmony between wielder and weapon remained beyond my grasp when I needed it most. Don't give up, Luna urged, her voice the only clarity in a world growing increasingly distant. With monumental effort, I pushed against the encroaching darkness, focusing on Luna's presence as an anchor. My vision cleared momentarily to find Valen kneeling beside me, his ancient eyes examining me with clinical detachment. Impressive willpower, he observed. But willpower alone cannot overcome physical limitations. I can continue, I managed, each word a struggle against the blood filling my mouth. Valen shook his head. No, you cannot. I wanted to argue, to demand he continue, but the truth of his words was evident in my broken body. He hadn't even unleashed his 9th attack, and already I lay defeated. As if reading my thoughts, Valen's expression shifted. You wish to continue? Very well. Consider this mercy. He summoned another dagger, this one a masterpiece of necromantic craftsmanship. Darker than night, with edges that seemed to cut reality itself, it hovered before him, thrumming with power that made the air vibrate. 9, he said simply and released it. I summoned the last dregs of my strength, channeling it into God Flash, my most powerful pure light technique. Brilliant light erupted from my palm, streaking toward the incoming dagger in a concentrated beam of pure energy. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd succeeded. The light connected, momentarily slowing the dagger's advance. But my attack was weakened by blood loss and exhaustion. The dagger cut through my God Flash like it was nothing more than a candle flame, dispersing the pure light and continuing its deadly trajectory unimpeded. The impact shattered what remained of my defenses. Bone armor disintegrated, mythic body faltered, and deep dark dispersed like smoke in a gale. The dagger struck my chest with surgical precision, the force driving me into the stone floor with enough impact to crater it beneath me. The last thing I saw was Valen's face, his expression not of disappointment but of something more complex. A mix of confirmation and expectation, as if my failure had proven something important. Darkness claimed me completely. Should be awake by now. The doctors did everything they could. My father's voice penetrated the fog of unconsciousness. I tried to respond, but my body felt impossibly heavy. Arthur. Luna's presence brushed against my mind. You're back. I forced my eyes open, vision swimming into focus. The Royal Infirmary ceiling came into view first, followed by my family's worried faces. My mother's eyes were rimmed with red. My father's brow creased with concern. Even Arya looked shaken. He's awake, my mother exclaimed, grasping my hand tightly. Thank the gods. My father breathed, relief washing over his features. Arya moved closer, her usual composure fractured by genuine concern. You idiot, she whispered, voice cracking slightly. We thought we'd lost you. About time, came Callie's voice from the corner. She stood with arms crossed, though I caught the relief hidden beneath her scowl. Your family has been insufferable with worry. How long? My voice emerged as a rasp. 2 days, my father answered. The king's 9th strike. The doctors said it was a miracle you survived. What were you thinking? My mother asked, her voice tight with barely contained emotion. Agreeing to face a radiant rancor in combat? Even with restrictions. He did what he felt was necessary, Elaine. My father interjected gently. Necessary? My mother's voice rose slightly. Our son nearly died for a contract, Richard. A contract. Not just a contract, I managed to say. An opportunity. I tried to sit up, only to be forced back by sharp pain. Don't move, Callie ordered. The dagger missed your heart by millimeters. You're lucky to be alive, Arya added, her expression unusually solemn. When they brought you in, there was so much blood. Frustration welled up inside me. I'd failed not just the test but myself. The aspect wall had denied me again, keeping resonance beyond my reach. The contract, I managed, though I already knew the answer. We'll have to wait, came Valen's voice as he entered the infirmary, his tall figure commanding attention. My father straightened immediately, placing himself slightly in front of my bed. A subtle protective gesture that surprised me. Your Majesty, he acknowledged with formal respect, though I detected an undercurrent of restrained anger. I trust you're satisfied with the results of your test. Valen's gaze shifted momentarily to my father, acknowledging the unspoken accusation with a slight nod. The test served its purpose, Lord Nightingale. Your son performed admirably. He nearly died, my mother said, her usual deference to royalty overshadowed by maternal concern. Yes, Valen agreed simply. A risk he accepted willingly. His attention returned to me. Until you achieve what you lack. His words cut deeper than his daggers. I'd reached for resonance and found only emptiness. Just as during the Crown Challenge, that brief flicker of transcendence proving impossible to recapture. Most wouldn't have survived the 5th strike, Valen continued. You endured 8 and remained conscious through the 9th. That speaks to potential worth nurturing. He'll achieve nothing if he's dead, Arya remarked coldly. Valen's lips curved slightly. A valid observation, young lady. Yet sometimes the greatest growth comes from confronting our limitations. I'll pass your test, I said, determination hardening my voice despite my weakness. I know, Valen replied. The contract will wait for you, Arthur Nightingale. Break through your aspect wall. Return when you've achieved true resonance. He departed as suddenly as he'd arrived, leaving weighted silence. My father exhaled slowly, tension visibly draining from his shoulders. That man, even limited by formality, his presence is overwhelming. I don't care who he is, my mother said, adjusting my blankets with nervous energy. He nearly killed my son. I agreed to it, Mother, I reminded her gently. She fixed me with a stern look that belied her worried eyes. That doesn't make it acceptable. What would we have told Cecilia if you died? Or Serafina? Or Rachel and Rose? The thought of my 4 partners receiving news of my death sent an uncomfortable chill through me. We're returning to Avalon tomorrow, my father said finally. The doctors say you'll be strong enough to travel. Good, Arya said firmly. I've had enough of the Western continent to last a lifetime. I nodded, mind already racing beyond recovery. The contract represented more than just political advantage. It was validation, proof that I could stand among the elite of this world. Valen had given me a clear path. Master resonance, transcend the aspect wall. You're planning to come back, aren't you? Callie asked quietly after my family had stepped away to speak with the doctors. I met her gaze steadily. You know I am, she sighed, shaking her head. You Nightingales, too stubborn for your own good. It's not stubbornness, I replied. It's necessity. Callie's expression softened marginally. Just make sure you're actually ready next time. I have no desire to explain to your harem why their boyfriend got himself killed, proving a point. I managed a weak smile despite everything. Duly noted. The path forward was clear, if difficult. I would return to Avalon, recover, and find a way past the aspect wall that had frustrated me for so long. And when I'd mastered resonance, I would return to face Valen's test once more. Next time, I would survive all 10 strikes. Chapter 384. Maven City 1. There wasn't much of a winter break left before I had to return to Mythos Academy after going back to Avalon with my family. The journey home had been quiet, my parents' concerned glances speaking volumes where words failed. My father had attempted several awkward conversations about knowing one's limits, while my mother simply fussed over my still healing wounds. Arya, for her part, had been surprisingly supportive, offering rare moments of genuine encouragement between her usual barbed comments. But now I was back, standing at the entrance to Class 2A on the first day of the second semester. 16 months. I'd been in this world for over 16 months now. What had started as confusion and disorientation had evolved into purpose and determination, though questions still lingered beneath the surface of my thoughts. Those questions would have to wait. My focus needed to be singular, grow stronger. Not for ambition or pride, but for survival. For happiness. The contract with Valen awaited, but first, I needed to surpass the aspect wall and achieve sword resonance. Beyond that, my close-quarters combat technique needed refinement, transforming it from enhanced aura applications to a proper full-body art through disciplined training. I slid open the door with a touch, scanning the familiar faces of my classmates. Lucifer Windward sat with perfect posture, his aristocratic features set in their usual expression of polite interest. Nearby were Rinkagu with his perpetually calculating gaze, Jean Ashbluff pretending not to notice my entrance, and Ian Vizirian absorbed in a book. The girls were clustered together, Seraphina's silver hair catching the morning light, Clana's animated gestures contrasting with Rachel's serene smile, Rose's warm gaze meeting mine briefly, and Cecilia's crimson eyes tracking my movement with undisguised interest. "You're late, Arthur," Professor Nero remarked, his tone stern but not harsh. "Yes, Professor, I apologize," I replied, taking my seat. He nodded, his leniency a small mercy for the first day. "We have your new rankings," he announced, activating the holographic display with a gesture. The rankings materialized before us. 1. Lucifer Windward. 2. Arthur Nightingale.
3. Rinkagu.
4. Rachel Creighton. 5. Cecilia Slatemark. 6. Seraphina Zenith. 7. Rose Springshaper. 8. Jean Ashbluff. 9. Ian Vizirian. 10. Clana Lopez. The top 7 all reached the final stage of the Crown Challenge, I noted silently. The pattern wasn't surprising. Professor Nero had explained that later practical evaluations were weighted to reward growth throughout the semester. And as expected, I'd lost my rank 1 position to Lucifer. "Change your seats," Professor Nero instructed, prompting a shuffling of bodies as we rearranged ourselves according to the new hierarchy. Lucifer and I passed each other during the exchange, his emerald eyes meeting mine as he offered a confident nod and smile. I returned the gesture, even as I realized with a jolt that I couldn't sense his mana level anymore. He'd already reached mid-integration rank, creating a natural barrier against mana sensing from those at lower levels. He's climbing even faster than before, I thought. The realization should have been discouraging, but instead, it crystallized my resolve. My path wasn't about competing with Lucifer. It was about transcending my own limitations. "Now, the first practical evaluation for this semester will be your field trip," Nero continued once we'd settled. "Last time we went to Nimrin, a city in the southern continent. This time we are going to the northern continent, specifically Vrindal." "Vrindal." Lucifer's voice carried a hint of concern, his emerald eyes narrowing slightly. "That is quite close to the border, Professor." "I am aware," Nero replied with a thin smile. "That is the intention. Vrindal is a city near the border against the Shadow Seekers and the Umbervale Covenant. Thus, there will be interesting missions for you to undertake there. Of course, this is safer than when you went to the borders for your mission last semester, as this is still a field trip, so some fun is meant to be had even there. You will be given tasks to complete that will be graded when we reach the city. The trip will be 4 nights. We all nodded in understanding, but my thoughts raced ahead. Vrindal City. According to everything I knew about this world's future, that city was destined for destruction during our visit. A brutal attack by the Umbervale Covenant that would leave the city in ruins. Mythos Academy students would die. Even a professor wouldn't survive. And Lucifer would face his first true wall, an encounter with the youngest bishop of the Umbervale Covenant, a prodigy heralded as the future pope. I glanced at my classmates, each oblivious to the danger awaiting us. They saw only another field trip, another chance to demonstrate their skills. None of them knew they were walking into a massacre. Now, the structure of this semester is the same as last year, Nero continued, his voice carrying the practice tone of a veteran educator. Your first practical evaluation will be done during the field trip to Vrindal City. Your second evaluation will be another mission you will choose in February. Your third evaluation will be your end-of-year project. Your fourth and final evaluation will be the end-of-year festival and Sovereigns Tournament. For now, decide the end-of-year projects you wish to do. If you are choosing the same class as last year, keep in mind you will need to outdo last year's project. His gray eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, the implication clear. Last year's Deep Dark project had culminated in Luna, my lich companion, a feat that had stunned even Nero himself. The bar I'd set was impossibly high. You did form a lich after all, Luna pointed out in my mind, her mental voice tinged with amusement. Not exactly something you can casually outdo. Agreed, I replied silently. I'm not even going to try competing with myself there. Nero dismissed us with a perfunctory wave, granting us the traditional first-day reprieve from formal classes. A small mercy that allowed students to readjust to academy life and begin planning for the semester ahead. I remained at my new desk, mentally cataloging potential projects. My thoughts kept returning to the aspect wall and Valens test. Whatever project I chose needed to complement my primary goal of achieving resonance. Arthur. Rachel's voice pulled me from my contemplation as she approached, her golden hair catching the morning light. What end-of-year project will you make? I am thinking of creating a full body art and use it for my Mechanics of Enhanced Aura class, I said, having settled on this direction during the quiet journey back to Mythos. Taking my CQC techniques and formalizing them into something more cohesive. Oh, interesting, Rachel said, settling into the chair beside mine with graceful ease as Lucifer had left his seat. Her expression shifted suddenly, a spark of inspiration lighting her features. But I have a better idea. She smiled widely, sapphire eyes glimmering with excitement. How about you make angel wings? Angel wings, I repeated, surprised by the suggestion. A divine miracle, Rachel explained, tilting her head slightly in that way she did when elaborating on something she considered obvious. After all, as a pure light user, you are at the point you need one, aren't you? Her assessment was accurate, though I hadn't prioritized it among my many developmental needs. Rachel, as a pure light user, understood the progression better than most. While I balanced multiple elemental affinities alongside Pure Light and Deep Dark, she had devoted herself entirely to mastering Pure Light. Divine miracles represented a crucial evolutionary step for Pure Light practitioners, inscribed Pure Light circles that could be activated with a thought, serving powerful functions in battle and beyond. For someone like Rachel, they came almost naturally, an extension of her gift rather than laboriously created techniques. As a result, her angel wings transcended divine miracles. I studied her thoughtfully, considering the suggestion. Creating a divine miracle for my end-of-year project would indeed be impressive, though I'd need to tailor it to my specific capabilities. I couldn't simply emulate Rachel's wings, not unless I used soul resonance to temporarily borrow her gift, which would defeat the purpose entirely. It's a compelling idea, I acknowledged, already mentally sketching potential designs. More focused than my original thought. Rachel's expression brightened, clearly pleased her suggestion had landed well. She glanced around briefly, noting that the other students remained absorbed in their own conversations, then leaned forward. The subtle scent of mountain wildflowers, her signature perfume, drifted between us. "Well, as a thank you," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper as she moved closer, close enough that I could distinguish the golden flakes scattered within her sapphire blue eyes. "Go on a date with me today." "Where do you want to go?" I asked, noting how Cecilia glanced our way from across the room, her crimson gaze narrowing slightly at our proximity. Rachel's smile widened, satisfaction evident in the curve of her lips. Maven City. Chapter 385. Maven City, 2. Maven City was the biggest city near Mythos Academy, which resided on its own private island just offshore. The bustling metropolis served as the primary hub for Academy students seeking entertainment, supplies, or simply a break from the rarefied academic environment. Its economy had evolved to cater almost exclusively to students and their families, with businesses ranging from upscale boutiques to themed restaurants designed to extract maximum money from young students with generous allowances. I'd visited Maven with Rachel once before, last year when she'd helped me select a suit to match her gown for the freshman ball. That shopping trip had been purposeful, efficient, Rachel guiding me through the maze of formal wear with the decisive authority of someone accustomed to social events. Today's excursion promised to be different, a true date rather than a practical errand. We'd agreed to change into casual clothes before meeting at the Academy's Warp Gate Plaza. I'd opted for simple elegance: dark trousers, a fitted shirt in deep blue, and a light jacket, comfortable yet appropriate for wherever Rachel might want to go. I arrived a few minutes early, watching other students pass through the shimmering portal toward various destinations. When Rachel appeared, I found myself momentarily stunned into silence. I blinked, struggling to process the transformation. Then, reflexively, I rubbed my eyes as if that might somehow adjust my vision to this unexpected reality. "You're surprised?" Rachel asked, leaning in with a knowing smile as she curled a strand of golden hair around her finger. "I don't wear clothes like this usually, but I thought it would be a nice change. Do you agree?" My gaze met her sparkling sapphire eyes. At least, that's what I told myself I was focusing on. I was most definitely not looking at how her blue crop top accentuated certain aspects of her figure, or how the black skirt fell at precisely the right length to showcase legs toned from years of combat training. The thin white jacket she wore seemed almost an afterthought, more accessory than covering. "You know," Rachel whispered, placing a hand over her chest in a gesture that somehow managed to be both innocent and anything but, "I can ditch my jacket when we are in private as well. In the end, you are a guy," Luna commented dryly in my mind, her mental voice carrying a note of resigned amusement. Something shifted in my expression, and I stepped forward, sliding my arm across Rachel's waist and pulling her closer to me. Her eyes widened slightly, that confident smile faltering as the tables turned. "You should be careful when teasing," I whispered in her ear, feeling her body tense and then squirm slightly against mine before I released her. The brief moment of control didn't last long. Rachel immediately reclaimed my arm, her cheeks flushed with a delicate shade of pink as a smile of genuine happiness spread across her lips. This was the fascinating duality of Rachel Creighton, the saintess of the North, heir to one of the continent's most powerful families, and wielder of pure divine light, who simultaneously delighted in moments of playful intimacy and asserting her claim over me in public. We stepped through the warp gate together, the familiar disorienting sensation of magical transportation washing over us before Maven City materialized around us in a kaleidoscope of color and sound. "I have our day all planned," Rachel announced, her grip on my arm tightening subtly as a group of female students passed by, their curious gazes lingering a moment too long for her liking. "First, there's a new cafe I want to try." I raised an eyebrow at her foresight. "You've put thought into this." "Of course," she replied with a light laugh that didn't quite mask the seriousness underneath. "I don't get you to myself often enough to waste the opportunity." The subtle emphasis on "to myself" was unmistakable. Despite our unconventional arrangement with Cecilia, Serafina, and Rose, Rachel had never pretended to enjoy sharing. She accepted it as necessary, politically and personally, But that didn't mean she didn't cherish exclusive time. The cafe she'd selected was tucked away on a quieter street, its facade adorned with intricate light spells that created the illusion of gentle snowfall, regardless of the actual weather. Inside, the atmosphere was cozy yet elegant, with small privacy enchantments surrounding each table. A feature popular with students discussing sensitive matters or, in our case, couples seeking conversation free from eavesdropping. "I ordered for us," Rachel said as we settled at a corner table with a view of the city's central plaza. "The chef here trained in the north. He makes cloudberry pastries that almost rival those at the Creighton estate." "Almost," I teased. High praise from a northerner. Her eyes sparkled with pride. "We don't compromise on quality. It's one of the first lessons I learned from my father." She leaned forward, lowering her voice despite the privacy enchantment. "The North remembers quality, and it remembers slights. Both equally." There it was, the steel beneath the golden exterior. Rachel's kindness was genuine, but it existed alongside an unwavering sense of what was hers and what was owed to her by virtue of her position and abilities. Our conversation flowed easily through topics both mundane and profound: classes for the coming semester, theories about the field trip to Vrindal, and eventually to my experience in the Western continent. Rachel listened intently as I described Valen's test, her expression darkening when I detailed the ninth dagger's impact. "He pushed you too far," she said, her fingers tightening around her teacup. "The contract was important, yes, but not at such risk." "It was my choice," I reminded her. "Your choice to accept a challenge from someone who could have killed you with minimal effort." She shook her head, golden hair catching the light. "Sometimes I wonder if you realize how precious you are to those who care about you." The slight hesitation told me she'd almost said "to me" before generalizing the sentiment. Rachel rarely expressed vulnerability directly, preferring to couch personal feelings in broader terms. After the cafe, we wandered through the city's central district, Rachel pointing out new shops and commenting on changes since our last visit. Her knowledge of Maven was impressive, another manifestation of her thorough approach to everything she deemed important. Throughout our walk, her hand remained firmly intertwined with mine, her posture subtly shifting whenever we passed groups of students, especially if they contained attractive females. At the Celestial Observatory, Rachel guided me through exhibits with the confidence of someone who had studied the material in advance. The new interactive display on elemental resonance proved particularly valuable, offering insights that might indeed help with both my divine miracle project and my pursuit of sword resonance. "You chose this deliberately," I observed as we exited the building into the late afternoon light. Rachel smiled, the expression both innocent and calculating. "I want you to succeed, Arthur. In everything. The unspoken, because your success reflects on me too," hung in the air. Not maliciously, but as a simple fact of how she viewed our relationship. A partnership of mutual benefit and genuine affection. As evening approached, Rachel led me to our final destination, a restaurant known simply as The Box. The establishment had earned its name from its unique design. Patrons dined in private cube-shaped rooms suspended from the ceiling, accessible only via personal lift platforms. Each box was transparent from the inside but opaque from the outside, offering diners spectacular views while ensuring complete privacy. "I made reservations weeks ago," Rachel mentioned casually as we ascended to our assigned cube. "They're usually booked months in advance. But I am a princess." The interior was intimate. A small table for two positioned before a panoramic view of Maven City at sunset, the ocean and Mythos Island visible in the distance. Ambient light crystals provided subtle illumination that would gradually dim as natural light faded. "Do you like it?" Rachel asked, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her confident exterior. Despite her careful planning and obvious wealth, she still sought my approval, a reminder that beneath the saintess and air was still a young woman who valued genuine connection. "It's perfect," I assured her, taking her hand across the table. "Thank you for arranging all of this." Her smile in response was radiant, unguarded in a way she rarely allowed herself to be in public. As our meal progressed, a curated selection of northern and central continent delicacies, I noticed Rachel becoming incrementally more relaxed, the weight of her public persona gradually lifting in the security of our private space. When dessert arrived, cloudberry tarts that even Rachel admitted surpassed her expectations. She leaned back in her chair, regarding me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "You know," she said, her voice taking on that particular tone that immediately captured my full attention, "I did promise something earlier." With deliberate slowness, Rachel slipped her white jacket from her shoulders, revealing the full effect of her crop top in the dimmed lighting of our private dining box. Chapter 386. Maven City, 3. "As I thought," Rachel said, deliberately licking white cream from the cloudberry tarts from her fingers. "Bigger is always better." Her victorious smile made it clear she'd noticed exactly where my gaze had wandered. I couldn't help it. Rachel possessed a distinct advantage over the other three girls in my life, one she typically kept modestly concealed beneath conservative attire. Tonight, however, the crop top she'd chosen to wear displayed that advantage to devastating effect. Luna had tactfully disconnected from my mind, as she always did when moments became intimate. She'd once compared watching humans in such situations to watching two baby rabbits cuddle. Cute but nothing interesting. Her absence left me alone with my thoughts, and with Rachel's increasingly bold display. I swallowed hard as Rachel deliberately leaned forward to continue eating her dessert, the movement calculated to maximize the effect of her outfit. The flush across her cheeks revealed she was fully aware of what she was doing, her sapphire eyes sparkling with both mischief and triumph. A small dab of cream lingered on her lower lip. I reached across the table, gently lifting her chin with my fingertips and wiping away the cream with my thumb. Instead of pulling back, I leaned in and pressed my lips to hers. The kiss tasted of cloudberries and cream, sweet and intoxicating. Rachel's technique remained endearingly clumsy, a reminder that despite her status as Saintess of the North and heir to the mighty Creighton family, she was still relatively new to these intimate moments. Her enthusiastic if somewhat unpolished participation only amplified my desire, her willingness to let me lead while eagerly exploring on her own, creating a combination that was uniquely, irresistibly Rachel. "You are so mean," she whispered when we finally separated, her voice both accusatory and pleased as she wrapped her arms around me. She nuzzled her face against mine, the gesture almost innocent in its affection. Then, with surprising swiftness, she repositioned herself, drawing my face against her chest in a possessive embrace. "I love you, Arthur," she murmured, planting a gentle kiss on the top of my head before gradually releasing me. "Getting excited, Saintess?" I asked, my hand finding its way to her thigh. The contrast between her public image, the divine Saintess, channel of pure light, beacon of the North, and this private Rachel never ceased to fascinate me. She nodded, her eyes luminous in the dim lighting of our private dining box. The golden flecks scattered within her sapphire irises seemed to glow with an internal light, a reflection of her divine gift, perhaps, or simply the intensity of her emotions in that moment. "Only with you," she answered, her voice carrying that unique blend of commanding certainty and vulnerable honesty that defined her. "Only ever with you." The declaration was both affectionate and mildly threatening, a reminder that while Rachel accepted sharing me with the others, her acceptance had limits. In her worldview, shaped by Northern traditions and her position as heir, what was hers was unquestionably permanently hers. That I had other relationships was a political necessity and emotional complication she tolerated, not a situation she embraced. "I've missed this," she continued, taking my hand and interlacing our fingers with deliberate precision. "Just us. No academy pressures, no political considerations, no." She hesitated, then smiled ruefully. "No sharing your attention." The admission was as close as Rachel ever came to acknowledging any jealousy. Her pride wouldn't allow for more direct expression of such feelings. "You have my complete attention now," I assured her, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Her responding smile was radiant, possessive satisfaction evident in every line of her face. "Good, because I have plans for tonight that require it." The restaurant's unique design, our transparent from within, opaque from without dining box suspended high above Maven City, afforded us privacy without sacrificing the spectacular view. Night had fallen completely now. The city spread below us like a carpet of jewels, the distant lights of Mythos Academy visible across the water. "Do you remember our first date?" Rachel asked suddenly, her expression softening with the memory. "Shopping for formal wear isn't typically considered a date," I pointed out with a smile. She waved this off with an imperious gesture. "It was time alone with you. That makes it a date by my definition. By that logic, every study session could be a date." "Now you're understanding," she replied, entirely serious. "I count every moment with you, Arthur. I always have, ever since I realized what you meant to me." The sincerity in her voice was disarming. For all her possessiveness and occasional manipulation, Rachel's feelings were genuine, a fact sometimes easy to forget when faced with her calculated exterior. As our evening at the box drew to a close, Rachel produced a small golden key from her purse, turning it over in her fingers with deliberate casualness. "I've made arrangements," she announced, a hint of nervousness beneath her confident exterior. "The Celestial Suite at the Silver Spire. It has the best view of the sunrise over Mythos Island." The Silver Spire was Maven City's most exclusive hotel, a towering structure of enchanted glass and moonstone that catered to visiting nobility and the wealthiest of merchants. The Celestial Suite was rumored to cost more per night than most students' monthly allowances. "Rachel," I began, somewhat taken aback by the extravagance. "That's perfect," she interrupted firmly. "And already paid for. My father's steward arranged everything." Her expression softened slightly. "We have early classes tomorrow, I know, but I thought we could watch the sunrise together before heading back." The request, for all its apparent simplicity, represented something significant coming from Rachel. Unlike Cecilia's bold advances or Seraphina's calculated intimacy, Rachel's approach to our relationship had always maintained a certain formal boundary, a product of her strict northern upbringing and her status as saintess. "That sounds wonderful," I said, taking her hand. Her smile in response was brilliant, genuine pleasure replacing the calculated seduction of earlier. Then it's settled. The Silver Spire lived up to its reputation. We were escorted to the Celestial Suite by staff who maintained a perfect balance of attentiveness and discretion, clearly accustomed to serving guests who valued their privacy. Rachel moved through the opulent surroundings with the easy confidence of someone born to such luxury, but I caught the subtle excitement in her eyes as we entered the suite. The space was magnificent. A circular room near the top of the spire with walls of enchanted glass that could be adjusted from transparent to opaque with a gesture. The furnishings were minimal but exquisite, dominated by a massive circular bed positioned to provide the optimal view of both city and sky. "Do you like it?" Rachel asked, a rare note of uncertainty in her voice, as she watched me take in our surroundings. "It's incredible," I answered honestly, walking to the windows to look out over the nighttime panorama of Maven City. Rachel approached from behind, wrapping her arms around my waist and resting her cheek against my back. "I wanted tonight to be special," she said quietly. "Just us." We spent the next hour simply talking, seated on the plush sofa that curved along one wall of the suite. Eventually, as the hour grew late, Rachel disappeared into the suite's luxurious bathroom, emerging sometime later in silk pajamas of celestial blue that managed to be both modest and enticing. I changed as well, into the sleepwear that had mysteriously appeared in my size in the suite's wardrobe. "We should rest," Rachel said, practical despite the intimate setting. "Classes start early." We settled into the enormous bed, the lights dimming automatically to leave only the glow of Maven City below and stars above. Rachel nestled against me, her golden hair spreading across the pillow, her head finding the perfect position on my shoulder. "This is nice," she murmured, her voice already growing drowsy. "Just being here with you. No competing for attention." The comment reminded me again of Rachel's complex feelings about our arrangement. She accepted it, even defended it publicly as necessary for political alliance building. But in these private moments, her true preference for exclusivity always emerged. Thank you for tonight, I said, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her head. All of it. She made a small sound of contentment, nestling closer. I set an alarm for sunrise, she mumbled, sleep beginning to claim her, and arranged for the warp gate to be ready for our return an hour before classes. Even on the edge of sleep, Rachel remained meticulous in her planning, leaving nothing to chance. It was simultaneously endearing and impressive, the same thoroughness she brought to academic studies and combat applied to ensuring our night together would be perfect. Sleep well, my saintess, I whispered, but she was already drifting off, her breathing deep and even. Chapter 387, Vrindal 1. It was soon time for the field trip to Vrindal City. In the weeks prior, I'd spent some time with Professor Lumina, the Pure Light specialist, discussing my divine miracle end-of-year project. She'd been surprisingly enthusiastic, offering rare encouragement and suggesting several ancient texts from the restricted section that might prove useful. A divine miracle is ambitious for someone who doesn't exclusively specialize in pure light, she had said, her luminous eyes appraising me with newfound interest. But your dual affinity might actually create something unique. The interplay between pure light and deep dark remains largely unexplored in academic circles. Beyond my project research, I devoted countless hours to training, pushing my abilities to their limits, only to discover a frustrating roadblock. I couldn't advance further in mana rank or sword mastery, no matter how intensely I trained. My arts could still be refined marginally, but I was approaching the peak of what I could achieve with mere sword intent. The realization was sobering. Without achieving resonance, I would plateau after completing my divine miracle inscription and formalizing my CQC into a proper art. And that thought wasn't good, especially with the memory of Valen's test still fresh in my mind. The aspect wall again, Luna observed during one particularly frustrating training session. You're pushing against it directly, which is precisely why you can't break through. Do you have a better suggestion? I asked, not bothering to hide my irritation. Not yet, she admitted. But brute force isn't the answer. That much is clear. The morning of our departure arrived with little fanfare, another field trip in a long line of Mythos Academy traditions. Yet I couldn't shake the knowledge of what awaited us in Vrindal. The city's impending destruction, the deaths of students and faculty, Lucifer's confrontation with the Umbervale bishop. All of it loomed in my thoughts as I packed my essentials and headed to the assembly point. The transportation arranged for our journey was impressive. A sleek white armored bus capable of accommodating all 100 students from our year plus the 4 accompanying professors. Its gleaming exterior belied the complex defensive enchantments worked into its structure, designed to repel everything from minor weather disturbances to coordinated magical attacks. Arthur, Rachel called, waving me over to where she stood with the other Class A girls. We saved you a seat. The seating arrangement within the bus was nominally random, but unsurprisingly, the elite students of Class A had managed to secure a section for themselves. I made my way down the central aisle, nodding to familiar faces while avoiding the speculative gazes of those still curious about my temporary fall from the top rank. Here, Cecilia patted the space beside her with a possessive smile that didn't quite reach her crimson eyes. I made sure it remained available. Through intimidation, no doubt, Serafina commented dryly from across the aisle, her silver hair immaculately styled despite the early hour. I merely explained the situation, Cecilia replied with sugary sweetness. No threats were necessary. Rose, seated behind Serafina, caught my eye and gave a gentle smile. They've been like this since we boarded, she whispered as I settled in. I think they're nervous about the assignment possibilities. Clara Lopez, the final member of Class A's female contingent, was already fast asleep in the seat behind Cecilia, her head resting against the window and soft snores occasionally escaping her lips. As the 10th-ranked student, Clara's position in Class A was perpetually precarious, leading her to compensate with relentless training that often left her exhausted. Let her sleep, Rose advised, noticing my glance toward Clara. Professor Nero swept through the bus, his sharp gaze accounting for each student before he nodded to the driver. With a nearly imperceptible hum, the vehicle lifted slightly and began to move, accelerating smoothly as we left Mythos Academy behind. "I've been researching Vrindal," Serafina announced once we were underway, producing a slender notebook filled with her precise handwriting. "It's a fascinating strategic location, positioned at the convergence of 3 ancient ley lines, which makes it a target," Cecilia added, her expression suddenly serious. "The Umbervale Covenant has attempted to seize it twice in the past century." A chill ran through me at her words, though I maintained a neutral expression. They had no idea how prescient that observation would prove to be. "It's also known for its unique architecture," Rose contributed. "Always one to find beauty even in potentially dangerous situations." The city was built in concentric circles, with each ring dedicated to a different element. "I'm particularly interested in seeing the Floralite district, where they've cultivated bioluminescent plants to illuminate the entire area." The conversation continued as the landscape outside transformed from the familiar coastal regions surrounding Mythos Academy to the more rugged terrain of the northern continent. Rachel, seated across from Cecilia, maintained a possessive hand on my arm for much of the journey, her sapphire eyes occasionally darting toward the crimson-eyed princess whenever she leaned too close to me. Their silent competition might have been amusing under different circumstances, but my thoughts kept returning to the fate awaiting Vrindal. Was there anything I could do to change it? "You're unusually quiet," Luna observed, returning to my consciousness after spending time in her own meditative state. "Just thinking about the assignment possibilities," I lied, unwilling to burden her with knowledge she couldn't act upon. "Liar," she replied simply, but didn't press further. Vrindal was part of the Windward Territory and thus closer to Mythos Academy as it bordered the western continent. The journey took approximately 4 hours, including a brief stop at a northern checkpoint where our documentation was verified by solemn-faced guards who seemed particularly interested in our professor's credentials. Finally, as midday approached, the gleaming spires of Vrindal appeared on the horizon, rising from the valley like a crown of light. "It's beautiful," Rachel murmured, and for once, her assessment seemed free of calculation or comparison. Even forewarned of its impending destruction, I had to agree. Vrindal was genuinely stunning, a masterpiece of magical architecture where traditional northern designs had been enhanced and elevated by centuries of arcane innovation. The concentric rings Rose had mentioned were clearly visible, each glowing with the particular hue of its elemental affinity. Our bus proceeded through the main gates with minimal delay, the Mythos Academy insignia granting us automatic clearance into the city. As we wound through the streets toward our accommodations, citizens waved or nodded respectfully, well accustomed to visiting students from the prestigious academy. "We'll be staying at the Crystalline Haven," Professor Nero announced as the bus finally came to a stop before an impressive structure of blue-white stone and enchanted glass. One of Vrindal's premier accommodations, arranged specifically for Mythos Academy students. The hotel lived up to its name, a haven of crystalline elegance where every surface seemed to capture and refract light in mesmerizing patterns. The lobby featured a massive central fountain where water flowed upward rather than down, forming complex geometric shapes before dissolving into a fine mist that renewed itself in an endless cycle. "Room assignments have already been determined," Professor Ashford called out over the excited chatter of students. "Please check the listings by the reception desk. You'll have the remainder of today to familiarize yourselves with the city. Tonight's banquet will begin promptly at 7, where we'll discuss your assignments in detail." The mention of free time triggered an immediate rush toward the reception desk, but the Class A students held back, confident that their accommodations would be superior by default. We were directed to the uppermost floor, where Rose and I found ourselves assigned to adjacent suites with balconies overlooking the city's central plaza. "Convenient," she commented with a soft smile as we located our rooms. "Perhaps we could watch the sunset from the balconies later?" "If time permits," I replied, conscious of Cecilia's narrowed gaze from down the corridor, where she'd been assigned a suite opposite Serafina's. After settling into our rooms and freshening up from the journey, most students scattered throughout the city, eager to explore before the evening's formal proceedings. I spent my afternoon methodically mapping escape routes and defensive positions, mentally preparing for the attack I knew would come, all while maintaining the appearance of casual sightseeing. The banquet that evening was held in the hotel's grand ballroom, a circular space with a domed ceiling enchanted to reflect the night sky above Vrindal. Circular tables accommodated 10 students each, with the professors seated at a slightly elevated table that overlooked the room. Unsurprisingly, Class A occupied a table near the front, with Lucifer at its head, his emerald eyes constantly scanning the room with casual vigilance yet filled with recognition. Chapter 388. Vrindal, 2. The Crystalline Haven's grand ballroom lived up to its name, a circular space where faceted surfaces caught and amplified the magical lighting, creating an atmosphere of refined splendor. Circular tables accommodated 10 students each, with the professors seated at a slightly elevated table that overlooked the room. I found myself directed to the Class A table, where Lucifer Windward already sat with perfect posture, his aristocratic features set in their habitual expression of polite interest. He acknowledged my arrival with a slight nod. "Arthur," he said, his voice carrying that peculiar mix of genuine warmth and instinctive competitiveness. "I trust you've prepared adequately for whatever challenge awaits us here." "As much as possible without knowing the specifics," I replied, taking the seat beside him. Lucifer's emerald eyes studied me with uncomfortable perception. "You seem preoccupied, more so than usual." Before I could formulate a response, Rinkagu dropped into the chair opposite me, his perpetually calculating gaze sweeping over us both. "Discussing strategy already?" he asked, reaching for the crystal water goblet at his place setting. "Or just the usual measuring contest between rank 1 and rank 2? "I prefer to think of it as mutual professional respect," Lucifer replied smoothly. Ren snorted. "Call it what you want. The rest of us are just waiting to see which of you slips up first." Such cynicism from our esteemed rank 3, came Cecilia's voice as she approached, crimson eyes gleaming with amusement. One might almost suspect jealousy. Ren's expression remained neutral, but I caught the slight tightening of his fingers around his goblet. Cecilia's barbs always managed to find their mark with surgical precision. "Princess," he acknowledged with exaggerated politeness. "Stunning as always. Is that dress new, or merely newly altered to better emphasize your political assets?" Rachel appeared before Cecilia could respond, placing a restraining hand on the princess's arm while fixing Ren with a glacial stare. "Perhaps we could maintain decorum for at least the duration of the first course?" "Dreadfully dull, but I suppose there's merit in tradition," Cecilia conceded, allowing Rachel to guide her to a seat, strategically positioned on my other side. Serafina arrived next, silver hair elegantly styled in a complex arrangement that somehow managed to look both effortless and meticulously planned. She acknowledged each of us with a precise nod before taking the seat beside Ren. "The northern light suits you," I commented, a smile gracing my lips. "Thank you," Serafina replied, the faintest hint of color touching her pale cheeks. "The eastern continent has nothing comparable to Vrindal's illumination." Rose slipped into the seat beside Serafina, her arrival as unobtrusive as always. While the others commanded attention through force of personality or status, Rose's quiet presence was easily overlooked, a misconception that often proved costly to those who underestimated her. "You've been exploring already?" I asked, noting the small notebook she tucked away as she sat. She nodded, a warm smile lighting her features. "The hotel has the most fascinating architecture. I've been sketching some of the junction points." "Of course you have," Cecilia said, though her tone lacked its usual edge when addressing Rose. Ever the diligent scholar. Jean Ashbluff arrived with his typical calculated timing, late enough to make an entrance but not so late as to appear disrespectful. His royal upbringing was evident in every movement, from the precise angle of his bow to the professors to the carefully calibrated smile he offered our table. "My apologies for the delay," he said, taking the seat beside Rose. Ian Vizirian slid into the next available chair, his fiery red hair messy despite the formal setting. His perpetually distracted air contrasted sharply with Jin's calculated presence. "Did I miss anything important?" he asked, glancing up from what appeared to be mid-sentence reading. "Only the usual posturing," Ren replied dryly. "You're just in time for the formal commencement of hostilities." The final member of Class A arrived last, Clara Lopez, her appearance suggesting she'd only just woken from her bus journey nap. Despite her obvious haste in dressing, she carried herself with the determined dignity that had earned her place among us. "Sorry," she mumbled, sliding into the last chair. "Alarm didn't go off." "More likely you slept through it," Cecilia observed, though not unkindly. Clara shrugged, neither confirming nor denying. Before the conversation could continue, servers appeared with the first course: crystallized ice wines, smoked leviathan from the frozen seas, and delicate pastries that glowed with shifting colors. The meal was clearly designed to impress, a reminder of the northern continent's wealth and sophistication. As we ate, the conversation shifted to speculation about our upcoming assignments. Lucifer maintained his usual reserved demeanor, offering measured opinions when asked but otherwise observing. Ren, by contrast, seemed determined to analyze every possibility, constructing elaborate scenarios for each potential task. "Individual assignments would be logical," he was saying, gesturing with his fork. "We've already done a lot of team-based assignments. The next step would be demonstrating self-sufficiency in unfamiliar territory." "I agree," Serafina said, her tone measured, "though I suspect the tasks will be structured to encourage some degree of cooperation despite being individually assigned." "Hoping to be paired with someone specific?" Cecilia asked innocently, though her knowing smile suggested otherwise. Serafina's expression remained perfectly controlled, merely stating the obvious tactical advantage of complementary skill sets. As dessert was served, frozen cloudberry soufflés that melted into warm compote upon contact with the spoon, Professor Nero rose to address the gathered students. "Welcome to Vrindal," he began, his commanding voice instantly silencing all conversation. "Tomorrow marks the beginning of your first practical evaluation for this semester. Unlike previous years, where we emphasize team dynamics, this evaluation will focus on individual capability and adaptability." A murmur of interest rippled through the ballroom. Individual assignments were unusual for field trips, especially in potentially dangerous locations like Vrindal. "Each of you will receive a task specifically tailored to your abilities and developmental needs," Nero continued. "These assignments will test not only your technical skills, but your judgment and decision-making under pressure." His gray eyes swept across the room, lingering briefly on our table. "Class of students, given your advanced capabilities, your tasks will involve higher risk factors and greater autonomy. You will be operating without direct supervision, though you will be required to check in at designated intervals." Cecilia straightened in her seat, a predatory smile playing at her lips. Finally, a chance to operate without constraints. "Don't get too excited," Jean murmured. "Higher risk means higher potential for failure as well. The specific details of your assignments will be transmitted to your personal devices at dawn," Nero concluded. "You will have 2 days to complete your tasks. I suggest you use tonight to rest and prepare accordingly." As the formal portion of the evening concluded and students began to mingle, Rose appeared at my side, her expression thoughtful. "What do you think they'll assign us?" she asked, her voice pitched low enough that only I could hear. "Something challenging," I replied, "probably involving our areas of specialty, but with unexpected elements to test our adaptability." She nodded, considering this. "Would you?" She hesitated, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "After we complete our first day's tasks tomorrow, would you be willing to accompany me to the botanical gardens in the Northwest District? They have night-blooming spectral lilies that I've been wanting to see." The invitation was presented casually, but I recognized the careful consideration behind it. Rose, unlike the others, rarely demanded time or attention. Her requests were gentle, thoughtful, and infrequent, which made them all the more difficult to refuse. "I'd like that," I found myself saying, despite my reservations about making any plans in a city destined for destruction. Her smile in response was radiant, genuine pleasure lighting her features. "Wonderful. It's supposed to be quite beautiful, she added, a hint of color touching her cheeks. Chapter 389. Vrindal 3. Dawn broke over Vrindal with a crystalline clarity unique to the northern continent. I woke before my alarm, a habit formed through years of disciplined training. After a quick shower and change into Mythos Academy's field uniform, a practical ensemble designed to accommodate both combat and formal settings, I checked my personal device. The assignment notification arrived precisely at sunrise, as promised. I scanned the details, a small smile forming as I read the parameters. My task: hunt and eliminate a Frostclaw behemoth that had been terrorizing the northwestern forests outside Vrindal. The 6-star beast had already killed several rangers and disrupted important supply routes. The assignment was straightforward: locate, engage, and neutralize the threat. Standard hunting assignment, I murmured, already mentally cataloging the equipment I'd need. Frostclaw behemoths are resilient, Luna observed, her presence a cool clarity in my mind. Though nothing you haven't handled before. She was right. During my time at Mythos, I'd successfully hunted numerous 6-star beasts. While formidable to most, they posed minimal challenge to someone of my capabilities. The assignment seemed almost insultingly simple. After a light breakfast in the hotel's restaurant, I prepared my equipment and headed out. The northwestern forest was about 30 minutes from Vrindal by transport, a dense woodland of ancient pines adapted to the harsh northern climate. Patches of snow lingered in shaded areas despite the relatively mild spring temperatures. The ranger outpost at the forest edge was my first stop. The lead ranger, a weathered man named Thorold, provided additional details about the behemoth's recent activities. It's been hunting in this valley, he explained, indicating a section of the map. Unusual behavior for a Frostclaw. They typically stay higher in the mountains. Food scarcity might have driven it down, I suggested, studying the terrain. Thorold nodded grimly. Whatever the reason, it's caused enough damage. 3 of my best rangers were killed. I memorized the relevant locations and set out into the forest alone, declining Thorold's offer of a guide. Tracking a Frostclaw would be easier without having to worry about protecting civilians. The forest was eerily silent as I moved deeper into its embrace. Even in spring, the northern woodlands maintained a solemn dignity, their towering pines creating cathedral-like spaces between them. I moved efficiently, using soul vision intermittently to scan for large mana signatures that might indicate my target. After about an hour of tracking, I found the first clear sign. Massive claw marks gouged into the trunk of an ancient pine, at least 3 meters up. Fresh sap still oozed from the wounds. The behemoth had passed this way recently. I continued following the trail, which became increasingly obvious. Broken branches, disturbed undergrowth, and occasionally, worrying smears of blood on rocks or vegetation. The beast wasn't bothering to conceal its passage, a sign of either territorial confidence or injury. The trail led to a small clearing where a gruesome scene awaited. The remains of what appeared to be a hunting party lay scattered across blood-stained snow. Torn equipment, shredded clothing, and very little else. The Frostclaw had been thorough. Recent, Luna noted grimly. Hours, not days. I knelt to examine the scene more closely, noting details that told a story of ambush rather than direct confrontation. The behemoth had used intelligence as well as brute strength, suggesting an older, more experienced specimen. A low rumbling growl from behind me confirmed that suspicion. I turned slowly, drawing Evolvus in a smooth motion as I faced the creature for the first time. The Frostclaw behemoth stood nearly 4 meters tall on its hind legs, its massive frame covered in thick white fur stained with old blood. True to its name, it possessed enormous claws that appeared to be made of living ice, a natural manifestation of its ice attribute mana. Its eyes, intelligent and malevolent, tracked my movements as I stepped away from the remains of its previous victims. "So you're the one causing trouble," I said conversationally, settling into a combat stance. The behemoth responded with a roar that shook snow from nearby branches, then charged with surprising speed for something so large. Its first swipe would have decapitated a lesser opponent, but I easily sidestepped, activating mythic body and bone armor simultaneously. My counterattack was precisely calculated, Evolvus channeling a blend of fire and lightning elements to exploit the beast's natural vulnerabilities. The blade cut through fur and into flesh, drawing a howl of pain and rage as the behemoth recoiled. It adapted quickly, however, switching tactics from direct assault to a more measured approach. A blast of frigid energy erupted from its maw, attempting to freeze me in place. I countered with a fire shield, the opposing elements creating a steam cloud that momentarily obscured both of us. Using this cover, I activated Godflash, appearing behind the creature and striking at the base of its spine, a known weak point for the species. My blade bit deep, severing critical nerve connections. The behemoth's hind legs collapsed, though its upper body remained dangerously mobile. Wounded and partially paralyzed, the beast grew desperate. It unleashed its most powerful ability, Frost Explosion, a devastating area effect attack that crystallized everything within a 20-meter radius. I had anticipated this, however, and was already airborne, using wind manipulation to launch myself clear of the blast radius. As the forest floor turned to solid ice below, I descended directly onto the behemoth's back, Evolvus aimed at the critical junction between skull and spine. The blade plunged deep, enhanced by a concentrated burst of lightning energy that ensured instantaneous death. The massive body shuddered once, then collapsed. The entire encounter had lasted less than 3 minutes. I took a moment to collect proof of the kill, one of the distinctive ice claws and a sample of fur for verification. Then, with methodical precision, I harvested the most valuable materials from the carcass. Frostclaw organs were prized ingredients for high-level alchemy, and the crystalline core from its heart would fetch a substantial price from the right buyer. By early afternoon, I had returned to the ranger outpost, presented my evidence, and completed the necessary documentation for my assignment. Thorold seemed impressed by the efficiency of the hunt, though not entirely surprised given my mythos credentials. "The merchants can resume their routes safely now," he said, signing off on my completion certificate. "And my rangers can rest a little easier. You've done good work today." I returned to Vrindal with several hours to spare before my evening plans with Rose. After submitting my completed assignment to Professor Nero, who acknowledged it with his characteristic minimal approval, a single nod, I had time to clean up properly and prepare for the evening ahead. The hunt had been almost disappointingly straightforward, a reminder that for all their fearsome reputation, lower-end 6-star beasts posed little challenge to someone at my level. The assignment felt oddly perfunctory, as if Nero had deliberately given me something well below my capabilities. Perhaps it was his way of suggesting the next 2 assignments will be on a different level of difficulty. After a relaxing shower to wash away the forest grime and beast blood, I changed into more appropriate attire for the botanical gardens. Dark trousers and a forest green shirt that Rose had once mentioned complemented my eyes. I found her waiting in the hotel lobby, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual practical braid. She wore a simple dress in a warm copper tone that echoed the highlights in her hair, with practical shoes that suggested she'd planned for a substantial amount of walking. "You're right on time," she said, her smile warming as she saw me. Unlike the calculated seductiveness of Cecilia, the calm happiness of Serafina, or the possessive affection of Rachel, Rose's pleasure at seeing me always felt genuine in its simplicity. "Wouldn't want to keep you waiting," I replied, offering my arm. "I hear these spectral lilies are quite remarkable. They only bloom for 3 nights each month," she confirmed, slipping her hand into the crook of my elbow with easy familiarity. "We're fortunate our visit coincided with their cycle." Fortune had nothing to do with it, I knew. Rose's meticulous planning extended to researching botanical schedules well in advance of our trip. It was one of many small details that made her different from the others: her quiet thoroughness, her appreciation for beauty that others overlooked. As we stepped out into the crisp evening air of Vrindal, I pushed aside thoughts of impending disaster for tonight. Chapter 390, Vrindal. The Vrindal Botanical Gardens occupied a sprawling complex near the city's northwestern edge, adjacent to the district that housed the Floralite research facilities. As Rose and I approached, I understood why she had been so eager to visit. Even from outside, the gardens presented a breathtaking sight, crystalline domes illuminated from within by bioluminescent plants, creating a constellation of gentle light against the darkening northern sky. They use minimal artificial lighting, Rose explained as we purchased our tickets. Almost everything you see is produced naturally by the plants themselves. The attendant recognized Rose's enthusiasm and handed us a specialized guide map. The spectral lilies began blooming about an hour ago in the Midnight Pavilion, she informed us. If you hurry, you'll catch the first phase of their illumination cycle. Rose's eyes lit up at this news, and she tugged me gently toward the indicated path. Her excitement was contagious, her usual reserved demeanor giving way to an almost childlike wonder that few ever witnessed. I've read about these lilies for years, she confided as we walked. They're incredibly rare. They only grow in 3 locations worldwide, and their cultivation is notoriously difficult. We followed a winding path illuminated by phosphorescent moss, passing through sections dedicated to various biomes and plant families. Each dome we entered presented a different atmosphere, some humid and tropical, others arid and stark, but all unified by the absence of harsh artificial light. Rose moved through the spaces with the confidence of someone who had studied the layout in advance, occasionally stopping to point out particularly interesting specimens. Her knowledge was impressive, extending far beyond what our academy coursework required. Botanics isn't just a hobby for you, is it? I observed as she identified a particularly rare fungus that glowed with subtle purple light. She glanced up, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. My family's connection to plants goes back generations. The Springshaper name originally came from our role as agricultural innovators. Her expression shifted subtly. Though, of course, now we're better known for Vauquert. It was an interesting glimpse into her family history. The Springshapers had begun as botanical specialists before making their dramatic pivot to necromancy, eventually founding Vauquert, the largest necromancy company in the Slatemark Empire. Their transition from life to death magic had made them enormously wealthy and powerful, though it had also surrounded the family name with an aura of mysterious transformation that made many uneasy. Do you ever think about the contrast? I asked. Between your family's origins and what Vauquert represents now. Her expression grew thoughtful. Life and death are more circular than most people realize. The techniques we developed for understanding plant growth cycles transferred surprisingly well to necromantic research. She touched a luminescent flower gently. I still maintain connections to our botanical roots, though. It gives me perspective. Unlike Cecilia, Rachel, and Serafina, who wore their lineages as visible mantles of power, Rose rarely mentioned her family's significance. The Springshaper transformation from botanical innovators to necromancy moguls had been one of the most dramatic corporate evolutions in recent history. Your family found its own path, I said. There's something admirable in that adaptability. Her smile returned, warm with appreciation for the understanding. We go where opportunity and knowledge lead us. It's no different from your own approach, really. Before I could respond to this unexpected comparison, we arrived at the Midnight Pavilion, the largest dome in the complex, its interior shrouded in near-total darkness, save for pinpricks of blue-white light scattered throughout the space. The spectral lilies, Rose whispered, her voice hushed with reverence. We entered quietly, joining a small group of visitors who stood in silent appreciation around the central pond. There, rising from dark water, dozens of lily pads supported exquisite flowers that seemed to be made of living starlight. Each bloom emitted a soft, pulsating glow that shifted gradually through the spectrum, from cool blue to vibrant violet to deep indigo. They're responding to each other, Rose explained, her voice barely audible. Each bloom adjusts its light based on the signals from surrounding flowers. They're communicating. We found a small bench near the water's edge and sat in companionable silence, watching the hypnotic dance of light. Occasionally, Rose would point out a particular pattern or an unusually vibrant bloom, her whispered observations precise and insightful. After about 20 minutes, the lilies began their second phase, emitting delicate motes of luminescence that floated upward like earthbound stars. The effect transformed the entire dome into a living galaxy, with visitors now standing amid gently drifting particles of light. "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely moved by the display. Rose turned to me, the drifting lights reflecting in her eyes. "Thank you for coming with me. I know this isn't as exciting as hunting beasts or crafting new combat techniques." "I'm glad to be here," I replied truthfully. In a world filled with constant training, political maneuvering, and preparation for catastrophes both known and unknown, this peaceful moment felt like a rare gift. Rose smiled, then hesitantly reached for my hand. Unlike Cecilia's bold advances or Rachel's possessive grip, her touch was gentle, almost tentative, a quiet question rather than a demand. I interlaced my fingers with hers, answering the unspoken query. Her smile deepened, and we sat there in comfortable silence, surrounded by floating light. As the second phase reached its peak, Rose suggested we explore the adjacent Northwind Terrace, which offered a panoramic view of both the gardens and the city beyond. We made our way through the complex, still hand in hand, occasionally stopping to examine particularly interesting specimens. The Northwind Terrace proved to be a semicircular platform extending from the highest point of the garden complex. Glass barriers provided protection from the brisk northern air while offering unobstructed views of Vrindal's illuminated skyline. "I've always loved how northern cities look at night," Rose commented as we leaned against the railing. "There's something almost magical about the way they use light against the darkness." I nodded, appreciating both the view and her perspective. The people of the North had developed a unique relationship with illumination, transforming practical necessity into cultural artistry. Vrindal exemplified this approach, its districts defined by distinctive lighting signatures that created a tapestry of color against the night sky. "You seem distracted tonight," Rose observed after a moment, her perception as keen as always. "Is everything all right?" I hesitated, weighing how much to share. Rose was perceptive enough to recognize evasion, but I couldn't burden her with knowledge of what was coming, of what I knew awaited this beautiful city. "Just thinking about the assignments," I said finally, offering a partial truth. "Mine was surprisingly straightforward. Almost too easy." She nodded thoughtfully. "Mine as well. I was asked to analyze some experimental necromantic preservation techniques at the Agricultural Research Station. A clear nod to Vachert's interests, but hardly challenging." She paused, studying my expression. "You think there's more to this field trip than we've been told?" It wasn't a question but an observation. Rose had always been adept at reading between lines, at seeing patterns where others saw only isolated facts. "I'm not sure," I replied carefully, "but it feels convenient. Class of students given straightforward tasks that allow plenty of free time in a city so close to contested territory." Rose frowned slightly, considering this. "You think we're being tested in some way beyond the obvious assignments?" Before I could respond, a server approached with a tray of delicate crystal flutes containing a luminescent blue beverage, a garden specialty made from the essence of certain bioluminescent fruits. "Compliments of the establishment for Mythos Academy students," he explained with a formal bow. We accepted the offered drinks, momentarily distracted from our serious conversation. The beverage tasted of winter berries and mountain herbs, with a subtle tingling sensation that suggested minor magical properties, probably a mild mana-stimulant, common in northern refreshments. As we sipped our drinks, our conversation shifted to lighter topics. Upcoming projects at the Academy, speculation about the Sovereign's Tournament, and Rose's ideas for combining traditional Springshaper botanical knowledge with modern necromantic techniques. "Vachert's current preservation methods are effective," she explained, warming to her subject, "but they're reactive rather than proactive. I've been developing a hybrid approach that combines living plant principles with necromantic stability." Her enthusiasm was engaging, her intelligence evident in the way she navigated complex botanical and necromantic concepts with easy confidence. This was the Rose that few people saw, passionate, animated, and brilliantly innovative beneath her quiet exterior. As the evening progressed, we gradually made our way back through the gardens, stopping occasionally to admire particularly striking displays. Rose continued to hold my hand, her grip becoming more assured as the night went on. Near the garden's central pavilion, a small ensemble had begun playing traditional northern string music, the haunting melodies carrying through the illuminated pathways. Without discussion, we paused to listen, Rose leaning slightly against my shoulder as the music washed over us. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "It's been perfect." I looked down at her, struck by the simple sincerity in her expression. Among all my complicated relationships, Rose's straightforward affection was uniquely refreshing, untainted by political calculation or power games. "We should do this